First contact fallout. The first sign that something was wrong came not as a dramatic explosion or worldwide broadcast, but as a subtle disruption in deep space monitoring equipment at observatories across the globe. At the Arecibo facility in Puerto Rico, Dr. Elena Reyes stared at her readings with growing confusion. The background radiation patterns from the Kuiper belt had shifted in ways that defied natural explanation. "Are you seeing this?" she asked her colleague, Dr. James Chen, who was already frantically typing commands into his terminal. "I'm seeing it, but I'm not believing it," he replied. "The gravitational signatures suggest at least 67 massive objects that just appeared. No approach trajectory. They just materialized at the edge of our solar system." Within hours, every major astronomical facility on Earth had confirmed the readings. Something had arrived in our solar system, and whatever it was, it hadn't bothered with the conventional laws of physics to get here. 3 days later, the objects began moving toward Earth. In the White House Situation Room, the President of the United States sat stone-faced as his advisors argued around him. Military generals pushed for immediate mobilization of nuclear arsenals. Scientists begged for restraint and attempted communication. Intelligence officers confessed complete ignorance. None of Earth's spy networks had detected any hint this was coming. "Madam President," the Secretary of Defense said, "we need to make a decision. These objects will reach Earth orbit in less than 36 hours. President Caroline Wu had been elected on a platform of domestic economic reform, not extraterrestrial crisis management. Yet here she was, potentially facing the most consequential moment in human history. "What options do we realistically have?" she asked quietly. The room fell silent. It was NASA Administrator Dr. Quaimosai who finally spoke. "We have the Artemis orbital platform. It's our most advanced space station, with observational equipment that might give us better readings. And," he hesitated, "we have the Helios protocol." Several military officials shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Helios protocol was a theoretical defensive measure, never tested, designed to create a concentrated electromagnetic pulse that could potentially disable advanced electronics throughout near-Earth orbit. It could also permanently destroy every satellite humanity relied upon. "Get me the UN Secretary General," President Wu said. "This isn't just an American decision." Within 12 hours, the United Nations Security Council had convened an emergency session. For the first time in decades, there was no posturing, no political maneuvering. Russia, China, the European Union, and the United States found themselves in perfect alignment. Humanity faced an existential unknown. As government leaders debated, Dr. Samira Kauri worked feverishly in her lab at MIT, an expert in xenolinguistics, the theoretical study of alien communication. She had spent her career being gently mocked by colleagues for focusing on a field with no practical applications. Now her phone wouldn't stop ringing. "I've been analyzing the radiation patterns from the objects," she explained to the harried government official on the line. "They're not random. There's structure there, potentially a form of communication using quantum fluctuations rather than electromagnetic waves." "Can you decode it?" the official demanded. "That's like asking if I can translate Mandarin having only heard 3 words, she snapped. "I need more data, and I need a team." 24 hours later, Samira found herself on a military transport to NASA's Johnson Space Center, along with a hastily assembled team of experts. Quantum physicist Dr. Viktor Petrov, computational linguist Dr. Mai Lin, astronaut commander Jason Ortiz, and, surprisingly, professional game designer and systems theorist Aidan Nakamura. "Why is he here?" Dr. Petrov asked bluntly, gesturing toward Aidan, who sat awkwardly in his flight suit, clearly uncomfortable with the high-security surroundings. "Because he's designed some of the most complex rule systems and alien psychology simulations in the entertainment industry," Samura replied. "We need creative thinkers, not just scientists." The objects entered Earth orbit precisely when predicted. 67 massive structures, each roughly cylindrical and approximately 3 kilometers in length. They positioned themselves in a perfect geometric pattern around the planet, ignoring all attempts at communication. Then, 27 hours after arriving, they broadcast a message simultaneously to every electronic device on Earth capable of receiving data. The message contained no audio or recognizable text, just a complex series of mathematical symbols and geometric patterns. Samira and her team worked without sleep, fueled by caffeine and the existential dread that had settled over the planet. Governments attempted to maintain order, but panic was spreading. Religious leaders proclaimed the end times. Military forces worldwide went to their highest alert status. "It's a test," Aiden said suddenly, 3 days into their analysis. The team looked up from their workstations, bleary-eyed and exhausted. "What do you mean?" Commander Ortiz asked. "The patterns. They're not just a message, they're a problem set." Aiden pulled up several segments of the transmission on the main display. "Look at the structural similarities to mathematical proofs and logical paradoxes. They're testing our cognitive capabilities." Dr. Lin nodded slowly. "That actually makes sense. Many of these sequences have multiple potential interpretations, depending on which axioms you accept as givens. And if we fail the test?" Dr. Petrov asked grimly. Nobody answered that question. On the 6th day, as Samira's team struggled to formulate a response to the aliens' mathematical challenge, the objects moved again. 7 of them descended to lower orbit, positioning themselves above major population centers: Beijing, New York, Moscow, Cairo, Rio de Janeiro, New Delhi, and Tokyo. From each ship, a smaller craft descended, about the size of a city bus. They hovered exactly 1 kilometer above the center of each city, just hanging there, silent and motionless. Then, all electronic communications worldwide simply stopped. Internet, cellular networks, radio broadcasts, all went silent simultaneously. Only hardline systems and specially shielded military equipment remained operational. The aliens had made their point. They could control Earth's infrastructure with ease. In the chaos that followed, President Wu took an unprecedented step. Using the emergency broadcast system through hardline connections, she addressed not just Americans, but, to the best of her ability, the world. "Citizens of Earth," she said, her voice calm despite the circumstances, "we face an unknown power with technology far beyond our own. But throughout history, humanity has faced seemingly insurmountable challenges and survived. We will approach this situation not with fear, but with the ingenuity and determination that define us as a species. I ask for your patience and your courage as we work to establish communication with our visitors." Behind the scenes, however, military options were being prepared. The Helios Protocol was readied for deployment, despite scientists' warnings that it might provoke the aliens rather than disable them. At Johnson Space Center, Samira's team had a breakthrough. Working with Aiden's theory that the transmission was a test, they identified what appeared to be logical inconsistencies in the mathematical sequences, problems that had no solution within conventional mathematical frameworks. "They're not just testing our intelligence," Samira realized. "They're testing our approach to problem solving." "What do you mean?" Commander Ortiz asked. "These problems can't be solved with pure logic. They require creative leaps, intuitive connections." She turned to Aiden. "They require the kind of thinking you use in game design." Aiden nodded slowly. "These aren't just math problems. They're puzzles that test whether we can think outside established systems." As they worked to formulate a response that would demonstrate humanity's unique approach to problem solving, intelligence came in from around the world. The hovering alien craft had begun emitting a low-frequency signal that appeared to be affecting human neural activity. People near the craft reported strange dreams, intrusive thoughts, and, in some cases, seemingly enhanced cognitive abilities. Then, 12 days after their arrival, the aliens finally communicated in a more direct manner. A message was transmitted to all functioning electronic systems worldwide. Humanity has been observed for 12,000 of your years. Your technological development has been noted. Your response to our arrival has been evaluated. You have failed the initial assessment. Preparation for integration will commence. No explanation of what integration meant was provided. In a secure bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, President Wu met with Samira's team, now expanded to include representatives from every major scientific power on Earth. What does integration mean? The president asked bluntly. Based on their technological capabilities and approach, I believe they see us as a primitive species to be managed, rather than equal beings to communicate with, Samira replied. Integration likely means some form of control or limitation of our development. They're treating us like children, Aiden added, or like animals in a nature preserve who've started to cause problems. Partially, Samira confirmed. And with Mr. Nakamura's insights, we believe we understand what they're truly measuring, not just our technological capability, but our creative problem-solving approach. And we have a plan, Aiden continued, but it's unorthodox. It will require coordinated action from scientific facilities worldwide. And, he hesitated, it involves revealing certain technological capabilities we've been developing in secret. What capabilities? President Wu asked. Dr. Petrov cleared his throat. Quantum communication systems that operate outside conventional electromagnetic spectra. Technologies that the aliens, despite their advanced capabilities, might not have developed, because their evolution and thought processes followed different paths than ours. You're suggesting we show them that humans think differently than they do, the president summarized. Exactly, Samira said. We don't need to match their power. We need to surprise them with our adaptability and creativity. As the meeting concluded, unseen by anyone on Earth, a massive energy surge emanated from one of the alien ships. The countdown to humanity's response had begun. The human response. They've started, Commander Ortiz announced grimly, pointing to satellite imagery showing unusual energy patterns emanating from the alien vessels. Whatever integration means, it's beginning. Inside a hastily repurposed hangar at Johnson Space Center, Samira's team had assembled what looked like a chaotic collection of equipment. Quantum computers linked to experimental neural interfaces, holographic projectors modified with technology that shouldn't officially exist, and at the center, a crystalline structure that hummed with an energy that made the air itself feel charged. The quantum entanglement network is online, Dr. Petrov reported. We've linked with facilities in Beijing, Bangalore, Geneva, and Cape Town. This was humanity's secret advantage. For 15 years, scientists worldwide had been quietly developing communication systems that operated through quantum entanglement, instantaneous connections that weren't limited by the speed of light or conventional electromagnetic interference. The technology was experimental, unstable, and officially didn't exist in any government's public records. Are you sure this will work? President Wu asked over a secure line from the underground command center. No, Samira admitted. But it's the only option that doesn't involve either surrender or futile military action. The plan was audacious. Using the quantum network, they would broadcast a response to the aliens' mathematical challenge, but not as a simple answer. Instead, they would demonstrate human creativity by reformulating the problem itself, showing that humanity could think beyond the constraints of established systems. Neural interface is active, Dr. Lin reported. Aiden, you're connected. Aiden sat in what looked like a modified medical chair, electrodes attached to his temples. As a game designer, he had the unique ability to visualize and manipulate complex rule systems, to see the patterns within patterns. With the neural interface amplifying his cognitive processes, he would help translate human intuitive leaps into the mathematical language they were constructing to communicate with the aliens. I see it, he murmured, eyes closed, mind navigating through visualizations of the alien mathematical challenges. They've built logical traps, paradoxes that can't be resolved within their established axioms. And our solution? Samira prompted. We don't solve their problems. We transform them. Show them that when humans face an impossible situation, we change the parameters. As Aiden worked with the team to formulate humanity's response, the alien integration process accelerated. In cities worldwide, people reported hearing strange harmonics that induced altered states of consciousness. Electronic systems began operating autonomously, and most alarmingly, in several research facilities, scientists discovered their experimental equipment had been remotely reconfigured for unknown purposes. "They're not destroying us," Commander Ortiz observed. "They're repurposing us." "Which means we still have time," Samara replied. 72 hours into the integration process, humanity launched its response. Through the quantum entanglement network, immune to the aliens' electronic suppression, they broadcast a unified message to all 67 vessels simultaneously. The message began with solutions to several of the aliens' simpler mathematical challenges, demonstrating basic understanding. Then it did something unexpected. It reformulated the paradoxes, showing multiple alternate frameworks in which the supposedly impossible problems could be resolved. Finally, it posed new challenges, uniquely human ones. Paradoxes of emotion and ethics, questions that blended logical reasoning with empathic understanding. Problems that couldn't be solved through pure computation, but required the peculiarly human ability to hold contradictory ideas simultaneously. "Message transmitted," Dr. Petrov announced. Then, more urgently, "We're getting feedback through the quantum network. Something's trying to trace the connection." The crystalline structure at the center of their makeshift laboratory began vibrating at increasing frequency. The neural interface connected to Aiden started overheating. "They're responding," Aiden gasped, his mind still linked to the system. "But not with math. With concepts, ideas I can't quite." He suddenly stiffened in the chair, his face contorted in pain. "Disconnect him," Samira shouted. "I can't," Dr. Lind replied frantically. "The system won't release." The aliens had traced their quantum communication and were now using it as a direct neural link to Aiden's mind. Through him, they were attempting to understand the human approach to their challenge. "They're curious," Aiden managed to say, sweat pouring down his face. "They've never encountered a species that thinks like we do." For 6 agonizing minutes, Aiden served as an involuntary conduit between human and alien consciousness. When the connection finally broke, he collapsed, barely conscious but smiling weakly. "They understand now," he whispered. Above Earth, the alien vessels began changing configuration. The smaller craft that had descended to hover over major cities returned to their motherships. The geometric pattern they had maintained in orbit shifted, becoming more fluid, less rigid. Then, a new message appeared on functioning electronic systems worldwide. Assessment parameters reconfigured. Previous conclusion invalid. Human cognitive structure anomalous. Human problem-solving methodology non-standard. Integration suspended pending reevaluation. In the days that followed, communication with the aliens gradually increased in complexity and clarity. They identified themselves as the Myriad, a collective intelligence that had evolved through entirely logical and predictable pathways. For millennia, they had observed and occasionally integrated other species into their collective, always species whose development followed predictable trajectories. Humans, however, had surprised them. The combination of logical reasoning with intuitive leaps, the ability to work both within systems and to reimagine those systems entirely. The peculiarly human talent for finding unconventional solutions to seemingly impossible problems. "They've been around for millions of years," Samira explained to President Wu and assembled world leaders, "but they've never encountered a species that evolved the way we did. Through constant adaptation to rapidly changing environments, through social cooperation that required both logic and empathy." "And now?" President Wu asked. "Now they're fascinated. They want to learn from us as much as we want to learn from them." 2 weeks after humanity's quantum response, the myriad vessels reconfigured themselves once more. Most departed Earth orbit, returning to the edge of the solar system. 7 remained, now positioned in a loose, non-threatening formation. A final message was broadcast worldwide. The Galactic Myriad acknowledges humanity's unique cognitive structure. Exchange protocols initiated. Diplomatic interfaces will establish at designated coordinates. Humanity's path diverges from standard development metrics. This anomaly presents opportunity for mutual advancement. In simpler terms, humans had earned the right not to be controlled, but to be partners. At Johnson Space Center, the expanded international team celebrated cautiously. The immediate threat had passed, but greater challenges lay ahead. Humanity would now need to unify as never before to prepare for diplomatic relations with an intelligence vastly different from our own. "You know what's funny?" Aiden said to Samira as they watched news reports of celebrations breaking out across the globe. "They came here thinking they were the advanced ones, with all their technological power and logical perfection." "And?" Samira prompted. "And they never expected that our primitive capacity for illogical leaps would be the one thing they couldn't comprehend, the one thing they needed to learn. And they never expected that our primitive capacity for illogical leaps would be the one thing they couldn't comprehend, the one thing they needed to learn." 6 months later, the first human diplomatic delegation prepared to board a shuttle that would take them to the Myriad interface vessel in Earth orbit. The delegation included scientists, linguists, and philosophers, and, at Samira's insistence, artists, musicians, and storytellers. As they prepared for departure, President Wu addressed them privately. "For all our history, we've looked to the stars and wondered if we were alone, if we were special," she said. "Now we know the answer to both questions. We are not alone, but we are indeed special. Not because of our technology or our physical strength, but because of how we think. Humanity's greatest power has always been our ability to imagine what does not yet exist, and then make it real. That is what you carry with you today. Not just the knowledge in your minds, but the uniquely human way in which you use that knowledge." As the shuttle lifted off, carrying humanity's first ambassadors to the stars, news broadcasts worldwide shared the same headline: "Earth was caught off guard. But what humans did next shook the galaxy." The story of humanity's place in the cosmos was just beginning.